Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of St. Margaret Mary, Where Are They Now? We hope you have been enjoying our series. Today, we have not one, but two special guests with us today. So I'm going to hand it over to our moderator, Mike Bellina, to introduce us to our guests today.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. Not a day goes by at the parish that we don't miss this wonderful couple who were involved in so many activities and ministries throughout the years. And it really is a pleasure to welcome for this episode our very dear, sweet friends, Deacon Rick and Maureen Soria. Rick and Maureen, welcome.
It's good to be back talking to you guys.
It's great to see your faces, and I'm with all genuineness, we miss you so much at the parish, and there were so many activities and events and liturgies that have intertwined throughout the years that you've been part of, that when those events and liturgies take place, you are sorely missed, and we look forward to hearing about your new life. But thank you very much for joining us. Let's start from the very beginning. What was your first experience of St. Margaret Mary Parish?
My first experience at St. Margaret Mary's Parish. Actually, there was almost two, I would say. I wanted my sons to come to the school. We were moving into the area, and I went and talked with Sister, and I just remember seeing a van parked out in the parking lot from one of the teachers that said Proud Mary. And this was back when teachers could take children somewhere. And all of a sudden I saw a bunch of boys pile in because they were off to a basketball game or a football game or something. But I just said, wow, that's neat. You know, they're proud of their school. Not even thinking it was from the song of the Proud Mary, but just the St. Margaret Mary. And in talking to Sister, she said for me to get my sons into school, Maureen and I would have to join the Women's Guild, and I would have to join the Holy Name Society. And at that point, I wasn't part of the church really. I had stopped going to Mass, and it was immaterial to me. I just wanted my boys in a Catholic school. And I went to the first Holy Name meeting, and there had to be like 250 men there for that meeting. And what I remember most, besides the camaraderie, was at the end of the meeting, 250 male voices singing, "Holy God, we praise thy name." And I was just caught up in the power of men's voices. I had never, ever paid attention to just that, the power that that voice has when they're united in song. And it just, from that moment on, I was just captured by the parish. And then a month later, I met this wonderful Italian-American priest named Joseph Sartoris, and the rest was history.
That's great. And Maureen, what about you? What were your first memories of the parish?
Well, as you asked that question, my brain was going back, and I realized my first memory was my first moment on St. Margaret Mary's area. We were searching for a church to become a part of because we had had an auto accident. Rich knew it was life-changing for him. He needed to get back to God and church. So we were hunting for a church, and we were living out in West Covina. And he, I think his job opportunity was in Lomita. So he said, well, there's St. Margaret Mary's. Let's go try that Mass. So we drove an hour from West Covina to Lomita and went to Mass. And the moment I stepped in and Mass began, I thought, this is a really warm parish. I was just struck by it, and the warmth of the people and the feeling that was there in the Mass. So I was drawn in immediately by that very first Mass that we went to. Rich was drawn in by the fact that it was bilingual, and that's what he grew up with. But I felt the warmth of the parish immediately, and then it never failed after that. That warmth always was there. So
that's great. What year was that? What year was that?
1978.
1978.
Yeah, we got here 1 month before Father did.
Okay,
Bishop
great.
Joe did.
Those were great years, that's for sure. It would be hard I'm sure, for you to to list what your favorite activities were that you did at the parish over the years, but what are some of the more memorable ministries or activities that the two of you were involved in?
Why don't you go ahead first?
I think the two for me was one, children's liturgy that was so important for me, and that experience of being with the kids. And hopefully it made Mass more meaningful for them. And then it was also the baptism preparation program that we were a part of, that we felt so welcomed in, these new parents, and they were so vulnerable and maybe not part of a church community. So our baptism preparation sessions were a way of welcoming and inviting them in. So to me, those were the two most meaningful experiences for me, the ministries that I was involved in.
Great.
Yeah.
How about you, Rick?
Well, you know, unofficially, it was the poker game after the Holy Name meetings where I sat with the guys, and Bishop Joel was there for that finance meeting. But I think what struck me the most about the parish and what it meant was shortly after I came to the parish, Bob Solis, that great old man, he was struggling and he needed a new roof and he couldn't afford to get it done. And so I was called and asked to show up at 7:30 in the morning at his house on a Saturday, and about 30 guys were there to put a roof on his house. And I remember his wife walking out, his first wife, and just kind of standing there in shock about this being done. And that's the first time I've ever seen that sense of volunteerism, where someone needed the help and parishioners just showed up to give it. And I was deeply struck by that the body of Christ wasn't just a word. It was a way of being for so many of the men and women in this parish. I think the second most memorable moment was the first fair, when we were hoping to make the $10,000 to cover the money we promised the school, and literally clearing out every marketplace of their sodas and beer because we had so underestimated the turnout, and even the Carney group come rolling in on 2 o'clock in the morning on that first Friday with more rides because they didn't have enough to meet the needs of the parish. The only thing we ordered too much of was corn. We had a Tuesday dinner afterwards just to get rid of the corn that we had bought, because we had patterned what St. Anthony's and Gardena did. And then the third, there's so many. The third was my Mass of Thanksgiving after ordination in the tent, and just the walk from the St. Joseph's to the tent, and having the men line up as an escort, an honor guard, and walking in and being in that tent and just being part of the community, and just seeing so many faces that I knew and loved. That was a huge moment for me. But then there's all those liturgies that we did, like outside in the parking lot. We'd have just the one Mass. Ricky Viveros' Mass of Thanksgiving when he was ordained. I mean, the list would go on and on and on. Of when my father died, and we had the funeral in East LA, that so many men showed up out there just to be there, even though they had never met my father, but they were there. And so, and Mike, you are a huge part of it, because the the young adult young adult choir that you volunteered for a few weeks was always central to what we did on Sunday, because the music that you and Brendan provided was just so uplifting for us.
Oh, we had a good run. We had a good run. It's funny you bring up your first Mass, Rick. We were talking to Father Ricky. I told him that his first Mass of Thanksgiving, in my mind, was one of the top 5 liturgies that I was part of at St. Margaret Mary, if I think of them. I put your first Mass in that top 5 category as well. It was the most memorable and unique liturgies, and a lot of it had to do with the tent, right? For those of you folks that don't know, in 2001 we renovated the church, and from April to August of that year, we celebrated Mass in a big tent in the parking lot. And those of us who did remember the tent very fondly. It was a great experience, a great community, and of course the highlight was the celebration in June of your first Mass after you were ordained a deacon. And I remember that Mass like it was yesterday. It was a great celebration. The parish just was, we were, as we continue to be so proud of the two of you. And that was just a great moment, that's for sure. Let's talk a little bit about that journey to the diaconate then. Somewhere along the process of you being faithful and active parishioners, you start feeling this call. In particular, Rick and Maureen, how did the parish play a role in that call to the diaconate?
Oh my gosh. First and foremost, without the parish, I never would have gotten to the point of hearing a call. I don't know how many men and women I could spend 20 minutes just naming men and women who touched my life at crucial times by seeing just their faithfulness. The Visalias with their daughter, and Dick and Judy Corwin, and the Vagers, and you and Teresa. I mean, they're just on and on and on. There was always this people just kind of living a life of goodness that kept moving me in that direction of just that church and living our faith wasn't just Sunday. That it was more and more of that. And I think, but there was a moment at Bishop Joe's ordination where I think the seed was planted, because I was there with the 2 rows of St. Margaret Mary's staff and volunteers that were there, that we were all packed up in the one little corner. But just being there and it wasn't articulate, it wasn't anything, but there was just something in that moment that I felt drawn toward and moved toward. And then it really was 2 more years of discernment, because it was hard for me to knowing I was going to have to walk away from being a coach and a number of other things that I was involved with, the fair, all those type of things, because it just would be a different journey for me. There was conversations that Charlie Vager and I would have at lunchtime, that we'd take lunch together, that he just would, he was so insightful about our faith, and I still was so raw about learning it and just hearing him. It was sitting with Father Joe, or Bishop Joe, so many times, and just his presence and his bearing would draw me, that there was something more in life than coaching and taxes and running around like crazy. As I went through the journey process, it was conversations with Molly Yanko, Nancy Castiglione. That's when I really got to meet and know Subalati, and it's so deeply touched by her wisdom. And then you had the hearts, Tom and Rosemary, and again Rosemary's enthusiasm for life and just encouragement, especially when I was denied my first time around that they said, no, thanks. Just her and Judy Corwin's enthusiasm. Don't give up hope, Rick. Just keep at it. Even for the next 8 months, Judy would walk by. She says, I'm praying for you, Rick. We're storming the doors of heaven for you. Just that kind of support to help me.
Sure.
And I think the memory I have the most of is when I did the first blanket drive. And Father Pat and I talked about it. And he walked in Saturday night with a dozen blankets that he bought just to make sure that it didn't look like a failure, because we had no idea what was going to happen. And the next day, on Sunday, we left with 19 trucks of clothing. I spent half the morning calling guys and getting them out of bed, basically, because I needed another driver. And then a day and a half later, Father Pat had a call, Goodwill, to come pick up a truckload, one of their big truckloads of clothing that we still had left over.
That's incredible. That's an incredible story. And of course, that you're ordained in 2001, the parish celebrates, and you become our new deacon couple. And really, when you think about the term deacon couple, while Rick, you got the alb and the stole and the opportunity to preach, Maureen, you play an important role as well. And the role of deacon couple is something that I know is still very important to you as you continue working in the formation of couples who are preparing for ordination. Maureen, how did you see your, how I shouldn't say did as in past tense, how do you see your role? How are you part of this team with you and Rick in ministry, not only at St. Margaret Mary, but as you continue today?
Well, at St. Margaret Mary's, I was really active in many of the different ministries Rich was involved in, just as a supporting, being there by his side and to help him. And all of it was so very meaningful to me and gift. All of it, the formation process, being a part of the diaconate life was all truly gift, and being connected with all of the people. When we moved up here, I really stepped back a bit, partly because it was kind of like needing to create home all over again in a new place, because we wound up moving into like a brand new house on raw land. And so I stepped back a bit, very much continued in spiritual direction. I was amazed at the depth of spirituality of the people up here. Very small community, but very active. So I was still very drawn to spiritual direction and the one-on-one connections. And then I continued to help Rich in the faith formation program, especially when it comes up and says, I don't have a confirmation later. Can you do that? Okay, honey. So I've stayed connected to the faith formation and the spiritual direction. I've kind of stepped back in the other areas. But it's all joy to be a part of the diaconate life. We just did a presentation for the diaconate formation process, and it did feel so good to be reconnected with them and helping to train them. So it's all good. It's just I've stepped back a bit because grandkids and home have become a big part of what I'm doing right now. So
sure. That's sounds like a full plate, Maureen, for sure.
Yeah, it is.
Well, Rick and Maureen, we, again, just so you know, you are very much missed and very much loved at St. Margaret Mary. So wonderful that you're continuing your active ministry to people who you are called to, and that's firmly where you are to be and where you're supposed to be serving today. Do you have any final thoughts and final comments to your St. Margaret Mary family before we say goodbye?
Oh, just, yeah. Every Sunday kind of, I view the Mass here with our pastor, but then I'll click on St. Margaret Mary's and view Mass again. because I missed that beauty. Our church, I've grown to realize it's a beautiful, beautiful church, and I do really miss that beauty. But I think our lives would not have happened without the people of St. Margaret Mary's living their life the way they do. I don't know how many people had touched my life that were just living their life, like the Hamleys and Marty Spain, and there's so many others that they were just living their life, and it just, formed mine. I guess by watching their lives, and so sometimes we don't think we're doing anything for God, but when we live our life the way it's lived at St. Margaret Mary's, and we reach out for other people, you never know who you're going to touch who's just standing there watching at a crossroads in their life. And truly that's what happened in ours.
That's beautiful. Well, thank God for us that the crossroads path, those paths crossed, and we were able to celebrate together and spend so many years together in active ministry and service to the great people at St. Margaret Mary Parish. Thank you for all those years. And thanks for joining us today. It was great to see both of you. And we look forward to, when this time is over, that you can make a trip down south and say hello to us live. That would be great.
We plan on it.
And that's what I would like to say. As much as I love being up here in Grass Valley and love our parish that we're a part of here, when we go back to Lomita and go back to St. Margaret Mary's, it is going home. It's going home for us. Every time I walk back into that church and connect up with the people, I feel this is home. So it's our second home.
Thanks,
Home away
Maureen.
from home. So thank you all so much.
We hope you can come home soon. Thanks again. All right, Matt, back to you.
Bye-bye.
Rick and Maureen, it was great to see you both. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. And just like Deacon Rick was telling us before we started recording, he's going to hit subscribe on the YouTube so he can watch these videos, these series that we do. So we invite you to do the same thing. We look forward to seeing you again here soon in Lomita, Rick and Maureen, and thanks for all your time today. And again, we hope you all at home are enjoying these series and look forward to the next one. Take care.